What did you do if a simple act of kindness completely changed your life overnight? For Ray Mendez, it was just another exhausting day behind a wheel of his yellow taxi. Bills piling up, 3 kids to feed, and not enough hours in the day to make ends meet. When he picked up an elderly Vietnam veteran who couldn't afford the fare to a friend's funeral, Ray made a split-second decision to give him a free ride. "Consider it a thank you for your service," he said, not thinking twice about the $60 he desperately needed. But Ray had no idea that this small gesture would set in motion a chain of events that would turn his world upside down. Within 24 hours, police officers would be knocking on his door with news that would leave him speechless. They say karma comes back to you when you least expect it. For Ray Mendez, it came back in a way no one could have imagined. The sun was setting over the city skyline as Ray Mendez pulled his worn-out yellow taxi to the curb. His eyes were heavy from working 14 hours straight, but his shift was far from over. 48 years old with salt and pepper hair that had more salt than pepper these days, Ray rubbed his tired eyes and checked his watch. Just 6 more hours to go. Ray had been driving taxis for nearly 2 decades now. Not exactly the career he had envisioned for himself, but life had other plans. After the factory where he had worked for 12 years closed down, the taxi became his lifeline. With 3 kids to feed and a mortgage payment that seemed to grow each month, he couldn't afford to be picky about jobs. The radio crackled to life. "Dispatch to Unit 247. Pickup at Veterans Memorial Hospital." Over. Ray grabbed the receiver. "Unit 247. On my way." Over. The drive to the hospital took longer than expected. Traffic was unusually heavy for a Tuesday evening. As Ray pulled into the hospital's circular driveway, he spotted an elderly man sitting alone on a bench. The man wore a weathered navy blue service cap and clutched a walking cane with both hands. Even from a distance, Ray could see the man's shoulders were slumped with what seemed like the weight of the world. Ray parked his taxi and stepped out. "Taxi for pickup?" The man looked up, his eyes a faded blue that had clearly seen more than their fair share of life. "That would be me," he replied, his voice rough like gravel. "Let me help you, sir," Ray said, extending his hand. "Much appreciated, son," the man said, grasping Ray's hand firmly despite his apparent frailty. "Name's Harold." "Harold Dawson." "Ray Mendez," Ray replied, helping Harold to his feet. "Where are you headed today, Mr. Dawson?" "Riverside Cemetery," Harold answered, his voice becoming softer. "Going to say goodbye to an old friend." As Ray helped Harold into the back seat, he noticed the metal pin to the man's jacket lapel, a Vietnam service medal. Ray had seen enough of them to recognize it immediately. His own father had served, though he rarely spoke of it. Once they were both in a taxi, Ray started the meter and pulled away from the curb. In the rearview mirror, he could see Harold staring out the window, lost in thought. "Vietnam?" Ray asked, nodding toward the medal. Harold's eyes met Ray's in a mirror. 1969 to 1971. 2 of the longest years of my life. My father served there too, Ray said. 101st Airborne. 25th Infantry Division here, Harold replied, a hint of pride creeping into his voice. "Your father made it back, okay?" Ray nodded. "Yeah, physically at least. The rest, well, you know how it goes." "That I do, son. That I do." The traffic was still heavy, and the ride to the cemetery would take at least 30 minutes. Ray didn't mind. Something about Harold's demeanor made him want to keep the conversation going. "So, who are you visiting at Riverside?" Ray asked. Harold sighed deeply. "My buddy Frank Torres. We served together. Saved my life more than once." He paused, his voice becoming thick with emotion. "Got the news last week that he passed. There's a small service today, nothing fancy." Frank never was one for fanfare. Ray nodded sympathetically. "Sounds like he was a good friend. The best," Harold confirmed. "We lost touch for many years. Life has a way of doing that, you know. But we reconnected about 5 years ago. Started meeting for coffee every month." Harold's eyes welled up. Going to miss those coffees. They drove in silence for a few minutes, the only sound the soft hum of the engine and the occasional honk from impatient drivers. "You have family, Mr. Dawson?" Ray asked eventually. Harold shook his head. "Never married. No kids. Had a brother once, but we lost him in '83. Cancer." He adjusted his cap. What about you? Got a family waiting for you at home. Ray couldn't help but smile. Wife, Maria, and 3 kids. Diego is 16, Sophia is 14, and little Elena just turned 10. Sounds like a full house, Harold remarked. Chaotic but wonderful, Ray agreed. Though it's getting harder to keep up with the bills. Elena needs braces, Diego wants to go to basketball camp this summer, and Sophia's talking about college already. He shook his head. I'm working double shifts just to stay afloat. Harold nodded understandingly. Times are tough all over. As they approached the cemetery, Harold began rummaging through his pockets. A look of concern crossed his face. I need to make a stop at an ATM, he said, his voice tinged with embarrassment. I'm afraid I'm a bit short on cash. Ray glanced at the meter. The fare was already at $27.50, and with a wait time at the cemetery and a return journey, it would easily exceed $60. How short are we talking, Mr. Dawson? Harold pulled out his wallet and counted the bills inside. I've got $15 to my name until my pension check arrives on Friday. The old man's face flushed with shame. I can give you what I have now and mail you the rest when my check comes in. I swear on Frank's grave I'm good for it. Ray looked at Harold's reflection in the rearview mirror, at the proud but weary eyes, at the service medal that represented sacrifices Ray could only imagine. Without hesitation, he reached over and switched off the meter. Don't worry about it, Mr. Dawson. This one's on the house. Harold's eyes widened. I can't let you do that, son. You said yourself you're struggling. Ray waved him off. Consider it a thank you for your service. And for my father's. He would have wanted me to help you out. For a moment, Harold looked like he might argue further, but then his shoulders relaxed. That's mighty kind of you, Ray. Mighty kind indeed. It's nothing, Ray insisted, though they both knew it wasn't nothing. It was at least a day's worth of groceries for Ray's family. They arrived at Riverside Cemetery a few minutes later. Ray could see a small gathering of people near one of the burial plots, no more than a dozen mourners huddled together under a green canopy. That'll be Frank's service, Harold said, pointing with his cane. Not many of us left now. He turned to Ray. Would you mind waiting? It shouldn't be more than an hour. I'd appreciate the ride back to my apartment afterward. I'll understand if you can't, though. Ray checked his watch. His dispatch would be wondering where he was soon. He'd have to make up some excuse about traffic or a flat tire. But looking at Harold's hopeful expression, Ray knew he couldn't say no. I'll wait, he promised. Take your time saying goodbye to your friend. Relief washed over Harold's face. Thank you, son. Ray helped Harold out of the taxi and watched as the old veteran made his way slowly toward the small gathering, his back straight despite his obvious physical discomfort. For a brief moment, Ray could almost see the young soldier. Harold must have been strong, determined, fearless. While waiting, Ray called his wife. Hey, Maria. I'm going to be a bit late tonight. Everything okay? Maria asked, concern evident in her voice. Ray looked toward the cemetery where Harold now stood among the mourners. Yeah, everything's fine. Just helping out a veteran. I'll tell you all about it when I get home. You're a good man, Ray Mendez, Maria said softly. Ray wasn't so sure about that. He was just a taxi driver trying to make ends meet. But today, at least, he felt like he was doing something right. As the service concluded, Ray watched Harold place something on the casket, likely a personal token of remembrance, before stepping back and offering a solemn salute. The gesture was so dignified, so full of respect, that Ray felt a lump form in his throat. When Harold returned to the taxi, his eyes were red-rimmed but dry. Thank you for waiting, he said, settling into the back seat. No problem at all, Ray replied. Where to now? Pinewood Apartments on 8th Street, Harold said. Apartment 314. Ray knew the place. It was an older building in a part of town that had seen better days, affordable housing for seniors and low-income families. As they drove, Harold spoke more about his friend Frank, sharing stories from their time in Vietnam and their reconnection later in life. Ray listened attentively, asking questions and laughing at the occasional humorous anecdote. By the time they reached Pinewood Apartments, Ray felt like he knew Frank Torres too. Here we are, Ray announced, pulling up to the curb. Harold nodded. Thank you for the ride, Ray, and for listening to an old man's stories. It was my pleasure, sir, Ray said sincerely. Harold reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn business card. This has my phone number on it. If you ever need anything, or if you just want to share a cup of coffee sometime, give me a call." Ray accepted the card with a smile. "I might just take you up on that." After helping Harold out of the taxi and making sure he made it safely to the building's entrance, Ray returned to his vehicle. He looked at the business card Harold had given him. It was simple, just Harold's name and phone number, no fancy title or logo. Ray tucked it carefully into his wallet. As he pulled away from the curb, Ray felt a strange mix of emotions. He was behind schedule and had given up a fare he couldn't really afford to lose. But somehow, none of that seemed to matter. He had done the right thing today, and that knowledge warmed him more than the prospect of an extra $60 in his pocket ever could. Little did Ray know that his act of kindness would set in motion a chain of events that would change his life forever. For now, though, he was simply a taxi driver heading back into the flow of traffic, ready to pick up his next fare and continue his long shift into the night. Behind him, Harold Dawson climbed the 3 flights of stairs to his small apartment, moving more slowly than usual. The day had taken a toll on him, both physically and emotionally. But as he unlocked his door, there was a sense of peace in his heart that hadn't been there before. Frank had been properly laid to rest, and Harold had experienced an unexpected kindness from a stranger, a reminder that goodness still existed in a world that often seemed indifferent to the struggles of old soldiers like himself. Neither man knew it yet, but their paths were destined to cross again much sooner than either of them could have anticipated. The rest of Ray's shift dragged on like molasses in winter. 3 airport runs, a drunk college student who nearly threw up in his back seat, a couple who argued the entire way to their destination. By the time Ray pulled into his driveway at 2:37 a.m., his entire body ached with exhaustion. The modest 2-bedroom house was dark, except for the dim glow of the porch light Maria always left on for him. Ray cut the engine and sat for a moment in the silence, rolling his shoulders to work out the knots. The house needed a new coat of paint, and the front yard could use some attention, but it was home. Every mortgage payment was a small victory. As Ray reached for his lunch bag on the passenger seat, he noticed something in his rearview mirror. There appeared to be something on the floor of the back seat where Harold had been sitting. Frowning, Ray turned and leaned over to investigate. It was a small metal box, about the size of a thick paperback book. The surface was dented and scratched, with what looked like decades of wear. Ray picked it up, surprised by its weight. It must have fallen out of Harold's pocket or bag when he was getting in or out of the taxi. Poor guy, Ray muttered to himself. He should return it first thing tomorrow, but Harold would probably be worried sick when he discovered it missing. Ray checked his watch again and sighed. It was too late to call now, but he could swing by Pinewood Apartments in the morning before his shift started. Inside the house, Ray moved quietly through the darkened rooms. The kids would be asleep, and Maria too, though she always claimed she tried to wait up for him. He placed the metal box on the kitchen counter and opened the refrigerator, the light spilling across the linoleum floor. There was a plate covered in plastic wrap with a note taped to it. "Save you dinner. Love you, M." Ray smiled. Even after 20 years of marriage, Maria's little gestures still warmed his heart. He ate the cold enchiladas standing at the counter, his gaze repeatedly drawn to Harold's metal box. What was inside? Family photos? Important documents? Medication? Ray finished his meal and washed the plate, still pondering the box. If it contained something critical like medication, Harold might need it urgently. Perhaps he should at least check to see if there was any identification inside that might give him more information about Harold. After a moment's hesitation, Ray carefully opened the box. The hinges creaked slightly, revealing the contents nestled on a bed of faded red velvet. Ray's eyes widened. Inside lay several military medals, including a Purple Heart and what appeared to be a Bronze Star. These alone would be precious to a veteran, but it was the gold pocket watch beneath them that truly caught Ray's attention. It looked antique, with intricate engravings on its cover. Ray gently lifted it, turning it over in his palm. On the back of the watch was an inscription, "To Lieutenant H. Dawson for valor beyond the call of duty." Below this was engraved a phone number and address. This must be important to him, Ray murmured, carefully replacing the watch. The medals and watch were clearly treasured mementos, irreplaceable to a man like Harold. Ray closed the box and took out his phone. He would try calling Harold first thing in the morning to let him know his possessions were safe. For now, though, he needed sleep. Ray placed the box on his bedside table and quietly slipped into bed beside Maria, who stirred slightly but didn't wake. Sleep claimed him almost instantly, his dreams filled with images of young soldiers in distant jungles, medals gleaming on their chests. Morning arrived all too soon, sunlight filtering through the blinds, and the sounds of his children getting ready for school filling the house. Ray groaned and reached for his phone. It was already 7:15 a.m. "Dad, Mom says you need to get up if you're going to drive us to school." Elena's voice called from a hallway. "Coming, sweetheart," Ray called back, rubbing his eyes. He had wanted to get an early start to return Harold's box before work, but it seemed the universe had other plans. By the time Ray had showered, dressed, and helped Maria get the kids organized and out the door, it was already after 8 a.m. His shift started at 9 o'clock, which didn't leave much time to make a detour to Pinewood Apartments. "Everything okay?" Maria asked, noticing Ray's distracted expression as she handed him a cup of coffee. Ray showed her the metal box and explained about Harold and the free ride. "I should return this to him, but I'm running late already." Maria's expression softened. "Your supervisor will understand if you're a few minutes late." "This is important, Ray." Ray nodded, grateful for her understanding. "I'll try calling first." He pulled out his phone and the business card Harold had given him. The phone rang several times before going to voicemail. Ray left a brief message explaining who he was and about finding the box, then promised to try again later. No answer, Ray told Maria, frowning. "I'm going to swing by his apartment anyway." "Maybe he's just not near his phone." "Do what you need to do," Maria assured him, kissing him goodbye. "That's one of the reasons I love you, Ray Mendez. You always do the right thing." Ray smiled, though he felt a twinge of guilt. If he were truly doing the right thing, he wouldn't be worrying about being late for work when an elderly veteran was missing something so precious. Traffic was unusually light as Ray made his way to Pinewood Apartments, the metal box secure on the seat beside him. He found a parking spot directly in front of the building, which he took as a good sign. The lobby of Pinewood Apartments was clean but dated, with faded wallpaper and worn carpet. There was no elevator, just a staircase leading to the upper floors. Ray looked at the mailboxes lining one wall, searching for apartment 314. There it was, H. Dawson, number 314. At least Ray knew he had the right building. He made his way up the stairs, the box tucked securely under his arm. The third-floor hallway was quiet. Most residents likely already gone for the day or still asleep. Ray found apartment 314 and knocked firmly. No answer. He knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. The door opened across the hall. An elderly woman peered out cautiously. "If you're looking for Harold, he's not there," she said, her voice wavering slightly. Ray turned to face her. "Do you know when he'll be back? I found something that belongs to him." The woman's expression turned sad. "Oh dear, you haven't heard. Harold collapsed at the cemetery yesterday. They took him to St. Mary's Hospital." Ray felt his stomach drop. "Is he okay?" "I don't know, young man. The building manager told me when I asked why the police were here last night. They were looking for his emergency contacts or family." "Police?" Ray echoed, confused. The woman nodded. Apparently, Harold had told someone to contact a taxi driver if anything happened to him. Strange request, if you ask me. Ray's mind raced. Had Harold met him? They had only just met yesterday. "Thank you for telling me, ma'am," he said quickly, already turning toward the stairs. "I hope he's all right," the woman called after him. "He's a good neighbor. Quiet, keeps to himself, but always willing to help when needed." Ray nodded absently, his thoughts already on how quickly he could get to St. Mary's Hospital. He pulled out his phone as he descended the stairs, calling his supervisor. "Morning, Ray," came the gruff voice of Bill Harrington, the day dispatch supervisor. "Bill, I need a favor," Ray said quickly, explaining the situation with Harold. "I need to go to the hospital to check on him and return his belongings." There was a pause before Bill answered. "You know, I'm supposed to dock your pay if you're late, Ray." "I know, Bill. I'll make up the hours this weekend." Another pause. "No need. Consider it your good deed for the day. Just be in by noon, all right? We've got a convention in town, and I need all hands on deck." "Thanks, Bill. I owe you one." Yeah. Now go check on your veteran friend." Ray hung up, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. He had until noon, nearly 3 hours, to find Harold and return his box. As Ray drove to St. Mary's Hospital, his mind kept returning to what the neighbor had said about Harold collapsing at the cemetery. Had it happened right after Ray left him? Should he have stayed to make sure Harold was okay? St. Mary's Hospital was bustling with activity when Ray arrived. He approached the information desk, the metal box still tucked under his arm. "I'm looking for a patient named Harold Dawson," Ray told the receptionist. "He was brought in yesterday from Riverside Cemetery." The receptionist typed on her computer, her expression neutral. "Are you family?" "No, I'm—" Ray hesitated. What was he to Harold? "Not family, not even really a friend. I'm his taxi driver. I found something important that belongs to him." The receptionist raised an eyebrow. "I'm sorry, sir, but I can only release patient information to family members." Ray felt a surge of frustration. "Please, I just need to know if he's okay and return his property." "I understand, but those are the rules. Patient privacy is—" Ray Mendez, a voice called from behind him. Ray turned to see a woman in a doctor's coat approaching. She was in her early 40s with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and tired eyes that suggested she had been on shift for far too long. "Yes, that's me," Ray confirmed, confused about how she knew his name. "I'm Dr. Patel," she said, extending her hand. "I've been treating Mr. Dawson. He's been asking for you." Relief washed over Ray. "He's alive? He's okay?" Dr. Patel's expression remained professionally neutral. "He's stable for now, but I'd like to speak with you privately if you have a moment." Ray nodded, following Dr. Patel down a corridor and into a small consultation room. The knot of anxiety in his stomach tightened. Why did she want to speak privately? What wasn't she telling him? "Mr. Mendez," Dr. Patel began once they were seated, "Harold Dawson suffered a major heart attack yesterday at Riverside Cemetery. A bystander performed CPR until the ambulance arrived, which likely saved his life. However, his condition remains serious." Ray swallowed hard. "But he's going to recover, right?" Dr. Patel hesitated. "Mr. Dawson's heart has sustained significant damage. Additionally, we've discovered advanced cancer that has spread to multiple organs. I'm afraid his prognosis is not good." The news hit Ray like a physical blow. He had only known Harold for a few hours, yet somehow this felt deeply personal. "How long does he have?" "It's difficult to say with certainty. Days, possibly weeks." "Not longer," Dr. Patel replied gently. "Mr. Dawson has been quite insistent about speaking with you. He became quite agitated when he realized something was missing from his possessions." Ray held up the metal box. "This, I found it in my taxi after dropping him off yesterday. I came to return it." Dr. Patel nodded. "That would explain his concern. Would you like to see him? I should warn you, he's very weak, and we need to keep visits brief." "Yes, please," Ray said without hesitation. Dr. Patel led Ray to the ICU, where Harold lay in a bed surrounded by monitors and medical equipment. The proud veteran Ray had met yesterday seemed diminished somehow, his skin pale and papery against the white hospital sheets. Various tubes and wires connected him to the machines that beeped and hummed around him. "Mr. Dawson," Dr. Patel said softly, "you have a visitor." Harold's eyes fluttered open, focusing slowly on Ray. A weak smile formed on his lips. "You found it," he whispered, his gaze fixed on the metal box. "Yes, sir," Ray confirmed, stepping closer to the bed. "It was in the back seat of my taxi. I came to return it as soon as I could." Harold's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely audible. "I was afraid it was lost forever." Ray placed the box carefully on the bed next to Harold's hand. "It seems very important to you." Harold nodded slightly. "More than you know." With obvious effort, he moved his hand to rest on the box. "The medals are for my service, but the watch belonged to my grandfather. He carried it through 2 wars. It's all I have left of him." Ray noticed that Harold's breathing had become more labored. "You should rest, Mr. Dawson. I can come back later." "No," Harold insisted, his fingers tightening around the box. "No time." He took a shuddering breath. "Need to ask you something important." Ray leaned closer. "Anything, sir." Harold's eyes locked with Ray's, intense despite his weakened state. "The address on the back of the watch. I need you to go there. Ask for Thomas Bradley. Give him the watch and tell him." Harold paused, gathering his strength. "Tell him Harold Dawson forgives him." Ray frowned in confusion. "I don't understand. Who is Thomas Bradley?" "Please," Harold whispered. "Promise me." Looking at Harold's pleading expression, Ray couldn't refuse. I promise, Mr. Dawson. I'll go today. Relief washed over Harold's features. Thank you, son. His eyelids began to droop. Tired now. Dr. Patel, who had been standing quietly near the door, stepped forward. We should let him rest, she said softly to Ray. Ray nodded, but before he could turn to leave, Harold's hand shot out with surprising strength and grabbed his wrist. The box, Harold murmured, his eyes still closed. Take it with you. All of it. For Thomas. Ray carefully removed the box from beside Harold, who had already drifted into sleep or unconsciousness. Ray couldn't tell which. I'll take care of it, he promised, though he wasn't sure Harold could hear him anymore. In the hallway outside, Dr. Patel touched Ray's arm. You've done a kind thing coming here. Many people in his condition have no visitors at all. Ray shook his head. I barely know him. We just met yesterday. Yet he trusts you with something clearly precious to him, Dr. Patel observed. That says something about the impression you made. Ray clutched the metal box tighter. Will you call me if there's any change in his condition? Good or bad? Of course, Dr. Patel agreed, taking Ray's number. And Mr. Mendez? Whatever errand he's sending you on clearly matters a great deal to him. In my experience, giving dying patients peace of mind is one of the greatest kindnesses we can offer. Ray nodded solemnly. I'll go straight there. As Ray left the hospital, he checked the time. It was just after 10 a.m. He had less than 2 hours before he needed to be at work. Opening the box again, he carefully removed the gold pocket watch and examined the address engraved on the back. It was in a part of town Ray didn't know well, about 30 minutes away according to his GPS. Ray got into his taxi and set the address in his navigation app. As he pulled away from the hospital, he couldn't help wondering who Thomas Bradley was and why Harold's last wish was to send him a message of forgiveness. What happened between them that required such a gesture at the end of Harold's life? The mystery deepened Ray's sense of responsibility. Whatever this was about, it clearly meant everything to a dying man who would serve his country and ask for so little in return. The least Ray could do was fulfill this final request, even if it meant risking his job. With determination, Ray emerged onto the highway, the metal box secure on the seat beside him once more. He had promised to keep, and time was running out. The address engraved on the watch led Ray to a quiet suburban neighborhood. Well-maintained homes lined the streets, with manicured lawns and flowering gardens suggesting a comfortable, middle-class community. It was a stark contrast to the modest apartment building where Harold lived. Ray pulled up in front of a blue 2-story house with white trim. The mailbox confirmed he was in the right place. Bradley was printed in neat black letters on its side. Taking a deep breath, Ray grabbed the metal box and walked up the stone pathway to the front door. He rang the doorbell and waited, suddenly aware that he had no idea what he was going to say. How exactly does one explain showing up unannounced with a mysterious box and a message from a dying man? The door opened to reveal a man in his early 60s with silver hair and glasses. He wore khakis and a button-down shirt, looking every bit the retired professional. Can I help you? The man asked, his expression curious but cautious. I'm looking for Thomas Bradley, Ray said. That's me, the man confirmed, his caution visibly increasing. And you are? My name is Ray Mendez. I'm here on behalf of Harold Dawson. The effect of Harold's name was immediate and profound. Thomas's face drained of color, and he gripped the doorframe for support. Harold sent you? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ray nodded. He asked me to give you this, he said, holding out the metal box. And to tell you that he forgives you. Thomas stared at the box as if it might explode. After a long moment, he stepped back from the door. You'd better come inside. Ray followed Thomas into a comfortable living room decorated with family photos. A woman's voice called from another room. Who is it, Tom? It's about Harold, Thomas called back, his voice unsteady. A woman appeared in the doorway, roughly the same age as Thomas. Her hand flew to her mouth when she saw the metal box in Ray's hands. Is that? She began. Thomas nodded. This is Ray. He says Harold sent him. The woman approached slowly. I'm Patricia, Thomas's wife. Please sit down. Ray sat on the edge of an armchair, still holding the box. I should explain. I'm a taxi driver. I gave Harold a ride to a memorial service yesterday. He left this in my cab, and when I went to return it this morning, I found out he's in the hospital. He had a heart attack. Thomas sank into the sofa, his face ashen. Is he? He's alive, Ray assured him. But the doctors say he doesn't have much time. Cancer, apparently. Patricia sat beside her husband, taking his hand. After all these years, she murmured. Ray placed the metal box on the coffee table between them. Harold was very specific. He wanted you to have this, especially the watch. Thomas stared at the box but made no move to open it. Did he tell you about our history? Ray shook his head. No, sir. Just the message about forgiveness. Thomas took a deep breath. Harold and I grew up together. Best friends since kindergarten. We enlisted in Vietnam together, served in the same unit. His voice grew thick with emotion. During an ambush, Harold saved my life, pushed me out of the way of enemy fire, and took a bullet meant for me. Ray thought of the Purple Heart in the box. He was hospitalized for months, Thomas continued. I visited when I could, wrote letters. When we both got back to the States, we remained close. Until he trailed off, looking to his wife. Patricia squeezed his hand encouragingly. Until the business opportunity, she prompted gently. Thomas nodded. In 1983, Harold and I pooled our savings to buy a small piece of land outside the city. It wasn't worth much then, just a few acres of woods and a stream. Harold thought maybe we'd build cabins there someday, a place for veterans to find peace. But you had other plans, Ray guessed. I got greedy, Thomas admitted. A developer approached me privately with an offer to buy the land. Instead of discussing it with Harold, I forged his signature on the sale documents and took all the money. Patricia looked away, clearly still pained by the memory. It was a terrible mistake. The worst of my life, Thomas agreed. Harold found out, of course. The look of betrayal in his eyes. He shook his head. I tried to justify it. I had a family to support, bills piling up. But there was no excuse for what I did. What happened to the money? Ray asked. I invested it in another business venture. Lost every penny within a year. Thomas laughed bitterly. Karma, I suppose. And the watch. Ray prompted. Thomas's eyes filled with tears. Before we deployed to Vietnam, Harold's grandfather gave him that watch. Said it protected him through 2 world wars and would protect Harold too. When Harold was shot saving me, the watch stopped a fragment that might have killed him. He wiped his eyes. After our falling out, I always thought he'd want it back. It was his most prized possession. Ray remembered Harold's words at the hospital for Thomas. He wanted you to have it, Ray confirmed. All of it. With trembling hands, Thomas finally reached for the box and opened it. He gently lifted out the pocket watch, turning it over to see the inscription. I need to see him, Thomas said suddenly, looking up at Ray. Can you take me to him? I need to make things right while there's still time. Ray checked his watch. It was already 11:20 a.m. If he took Thomas to the hospital now, he'd definitely be late for his shift. Bill had been understanding once, but Ray doubted he'd get a second pass. Patricia seemed to read his hesitation. We can drive ourselves, she offered. You've already done so much by bringing this to us. As Ray considered his options, his phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize. Mr. Mendez? Came the now familiar voice of Dr. Patel. I'm calling about Harold Dawson. Ray's heart sank. Has he? His condition has deteriorated rapidly, Dr. Patel said. If you or anyone else wants to see him, I would suggest coming quickly. I understand, Ray said, looking at Thomas and Patricia. I'm with someone who needs to see him. We'll be there as soon as possible. As Ray ended the call, he made his decision. That was Harold's doctor. We need to go now. He turned to Thomas. I'll drive you. 20 minutes later, they arrived at St. Mary's Hospital. As they hurried through the corridors toward the ICU, Ray spotted 2 police officers standing outside Harold's room, talking with Dr. Patel. What's going on? Ray asked as they approached. Dr. Patel turned, relief evident on her face when she saw Ray. Mr. Mendez, good. These officers have some questions about Mr. Dawson's affairs. Apparently, he listed you as his emergency contact. Ray stared at her in confusion. Me? But we only met yesterday. One of the officers, a stocky man with a buzz cut, stepped forward. Officer Reyes. You're Ray Mendez. Ray nodded, suddenly wary. Is something wrong? Not at all, Officer Reyes assured him. Mr. Dawson regained consciousness about an hour ago and was quite insistent about updating his legal documentation. The hospital called us to witness and make it official. The second officer, a woman with short blonde hair, added, "It's unusual but not unheard of, especially in cases where there's no next of kin." Thomas stepped forward. "How is he? Can we see him?" Dr. Patel looked at him questioningly. "This is Thomas Bradley," Ray explained. "An old friend of Harold's." Dr. Patel's expression softened. "Mr. Dawson is conscious but very weak. You can see him briefly, but please remember his condition is fragile." Inside the room, Harold looked even smaller than before, his skin now with a grayish tinge. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow. The steady beep of the heart monitor provided the only reassurance that he was still alive. "Harold." Thomas approached the bed, his voice breaking. "It's Tom." Harold's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, he seemed confused, but then recognition dawned. "Tom," he whispered. "You came." "Of course I came," Thomas said, taking Harold's hand. "I'm so sorry, Harold." "For everything." A ghost of a smile crossed Harold's face. "Got my message then?" "I did," Thomas confirmed, tears flowing freely now. "But Harold, I'm the one who needs forgiveness, not you." Harold shook his head slightly. "Needed to forgive you for myself. Been holding on to it too long." Ray stood back, feeling like an intruder on this intensely private moment. He was about to step out when Harold's gaze found him. "Ray," Harold called weakly. "Come here." Ray approached the bed. "I'm here, Mr. Dawson." Harold's eyes were clearer now, focused intently on Ray's face. "Thank you for keeping your promise." "It was nothing," Ray assured him. "Not nothing," Harold insisted. "Everything." With visible effort, he turned to look at Officer Reyes, who had followed them into the room. "Papers, ready?" Officer Reyes nodded, producing an envelope. "All sign and witness, Mr. Dawson." "Legal and binding." Harold's gaze returned to Ray. "The land," he said, each word clearly an effort. "My half never sold. All these years." Ray looked at Thomas in confusion. Thomas explained, his voice thick with emotion. "The developer only bought my half of the land. Harold refused to sell his portion." "Worthless then," Harold whispered. "Not now." Officer Reyes stepped forward. "Mr. Dawson's land sits on what is now the edge of the city's newest development area. A mineral survey last month discovered significant deposits beneath it. The land is worth millions," the female officer added. "And Mr. Dawson has named you, Mr. Mendez, as his sole beneficiary." Ray felt as if the floor had dropped out from under him. "That's not possible," he stammered. "We only just met." Harold's hand found Ray's, his grip surprisingly strong for a man so close to death. "Kindness, without expectation of reward. Rare thing." His breathing became more labored. "Use it well. For your family." "Harold, I can't accept this," Ray protested. "Already done," Harold whispered. Then, looking at Thomas, he added, "Partners again. Help him." Thomas nodded solemnly. "I will, Harold. I promise." A sense of peace seemed to settle over Harold. "Good," he said, his voice fading. "That's good." The heart monitor's beeping slowed, and Dr. Patel moved quickly to the bedside. Ray and Thomas stepped back, allowing her access to her patient. After checking Harold's vitals, she looked up at them with a gentle expression. "He's sleeping now," she said softly. "I think we should let him rest." In the hallway outside, Ray stood in shock, trying to process what had just happened. Thomas placed a hand on his shoulder. "He was always a good judge of character," Thomas said quietly. "Saw something in you worth trusting." Ray shook his head in disbelief. "But to leave me everything. It doesn't make sense." "It makes perfect sense," Thomas replied. "You showed him kindness when he needed it most, expected nothing in return, and kept your word even at cost to yourself." He smiled sadly. "That's rare in this world," and Harold recognized it. Officer Reyes approached with the envelope. "These are the legal documents outlining Mr. Dawson's bequest. You'll need to speak with his attorney about the details, but essentially, you're now the owner of approximately 5 acres of prime real estate." Ray accepted the envelope numbly. His phone buzzed, a text from Bill. "Where are you?" "Shift started 20 minutes ago." Looking from his phone to the envelope in his hand, Ray felt as if he were standing at a crossroads. His old life of constant struggle and worry about bills seemed suddenly distant, like a fading dream. Patricia joined them, her eyes red from crying. "What will you do?" she asked gently. Ray thought of his family, of Maria's constant support, of Diego's dreams of college, of Sophia's passion for basketball, of Elena's need for braces. He thought of the countless hours behind the wheel of his taxi, of the constant stress of living paycheck to paycheck. Then he thought of Harold, who had given him this gift not because Ray had done anything extraordinary, but simply because he had shown kindness when it was needed. First, Ray said, finding his voice at last, "I'm going to call my wife. Then I'm going to resign from my job." He looked toward Harold's room. "And then I'm going to make sure his generosity changes more lives than just mine." As if in response, the golden pocket watch in Thomas's hand suddenly began to tick, marking the beginning of a new chapter in Ray Mendez's life, a chapter made possible by a free taxi ride and the unexpected karma that followed.